This is Pete Moore on Halo Talks NYC on location, California, with my new friend from Santa Monica, entrepreneur Shauna Reiter. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Pete. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So you are officially part of the Halo sector through helping people feel and look better. So let's talk about Alaya and tell us about your personal frustrations that have evolved into a thriving business.
I love that. I love that introduction. You know, it's true. I think solving a problem is how most successful businesses are started, as you and I were just discussing. And for me, the problem was one of depletion and a history of really severe autoimmune disease. I had been down some pretty scary roads in my youth that were not unfortunately resolved through the pharmaceuticals recommended by doctors. And there was a little bit of a crazy hunt for me over the course of about 2 years in terms of finding resolve for both what is called a leukopenia, it's or neutropenia. There's different ways of categorizing it, but I was born with a body that just doesn't produce a normal number of white blood cells. In addition to that, I tested positive for Crohn's disease when I was 14 and simultaneously was battling parasites. So there were a lot of variables with overlapping symptoms that my body was not, unfortunately, able to overcome naturally. And so I was seeking, medical advice, and the prescriptions just weren't working. And so eventually I got off prednisone and Asacol and all of the Western pharmaceuticals and went down a more holistic, naturalistic route. I turned to Chinese herbs, homeopathic medicine, acupuncture, and primarily nutrition, slowing my body down, cultivating what I now understand as a meditation practice or mindfulness. But at the time, whether or not it was categorized as such, I wasn't aware of it. I was only 15, but, 14 kind of transitioning into 15. But basically listening to my body and understanding the cues and recognizing that when I eat certain things, I don't feel great the next day or even within hours. If I don't sleep enough, I'm cranky and everything feels inflamed. So I ended up on a really beautiful path ultimately in my late teens. But then after having my second child, after 24 months, in my 30s, I found myself once again really struggling to feel inspired and vibrant, alive, awake, all of the things we want to wake up every day feeling. And so I decided to once again return to the sort of medicinal practices of my youth, which were really cultivating mindfulness around eating and nutrition and understanding that my physical needs had changed drastically. Since I was a teenager, I was now the mother of 2 children. I'd been breastfeeding consecutively, for years. I went from breastfeeding one child directly into childbirth and breastfeeding my second. And I began to do intensive research into what my body required at that stage, at that point in my life. And really was pretty dissatisfied with the finding. I felt like nothing I was eating was satiating me. I still lacked energy. And so as any new breastfeeding mother understands, there's really not enough to consume. Everything is being stripped. Pounds of minerals, are being stripped from your body by the baby. And you're, of course, recovering from childbirth simultaneously. And so I started investigating powders, protein powders, different kinds of collagens, and didn't feel physiologically like my body was transforming the way I was hoping it would, or responding in the way of feeling the kind of energy I was seeking. So my initial concept was to start a line for new mothers and for breastfeeding women. And then I decided I wouldn't be in that stage for the rest of my life. So I wanted to create nutrition that would sustain me indefinitely. And I began my company, Alaya Naturals, really based on a very strong desire to not only have the energy that I required to do all the other things that I was, wanting to pursue in my life, like music and singing and things I had done professionally in the past. But to not also slip back into a place of being unwell, which had been, my story in my youth when I had overlooked, all of the signals and really sort of trampled, the signs that it was time to slow down and properly feed myself emotionally and physiologically.
Got it. Well, that's a great summary and journey, and congrats on getting to this point of not only self-awareness, but, self-natural medication must feel good to be able to achieve. As you were going down that path, did you seek out, besides your personal research, any nutritionists or naturopathic doctors or,
Of course.
and then as part of that, was there a part of you that was always like, what, maybe what's out there isn't, whatever's obvious is not the answer. Actually I have to kind of go deeper to actually find it, because obviously there's products that have doctors that market those products.
Right.
How did you get to, I guess, a state of clarity to say, hey, no one's trying to sell me anything,
Right.
or like become an evangelist for something?
Right.
How did you kind of get to that awakening, I
Right.
guess?
Well, my starting point was one of distrust, which I suppose fueled part of my passion and really, pursuing clean, well-sourced ingredients that I felt, I could trust. I think that when you have in the past experienced healing through nutrition, you understand the difference between pure quality ingredients and, those kind of marketing, companies marketing products that are clever and strategic in the ways they're presenting, but that actually aren't having an effect. And that's something that took a lot of time and practice. And there are kind of two components of that for me. One is the research, which is, whose agenda is it that I'm sort of buying into? What is their mission? What's their purpose? What do they have to gain from this? And who are they associated with? Right. So, when you're looking at farming practices and when you're looking at, entrepreneurs and, every sort of facet of what goes into creating nutrition, understanding the relationships among people are so important, because if there's a big profit to be gained, then sometimes quality can be overlooked, and there's also, of course, marketing gimmicks like saying that something is natural, which I at one point thought meant organic and sustainably sourced and environmentally conscious and all of those things and fair trade and yada yada, and which I now understand means nothing but the word natural. And so sort of peeling back the curtains and the layers and understanding that you do have to do a deeper level of research to understand where something is sourced, how it's created, who's marketing it, and why. In addition to that, then of course, just having your own personal experience of consuming, the nutrition and saying like, do I actually feel different? Does my skin look, more alive? Am I brighter? Is my cognition sharper? Like, how am I, what's the effect on this, physically? And am I really tapping into it? And by the way, I think that placebos can be very effective, but over time they wear off, right? So.
Well, I was in the Vons the other day, and I was tasked with getting bone broth. And I came home and
with this mission.
I thought my fiance tasked me with that. So I came back and I was like, excited because I got the natural bone broth.
Right.
And I was quickly reprimanded and understand that it was not the organic bone broth, which I personally did not know the difference between, even though I'm supposed to be running the Halo sector.
Pete, you would have had a very successful outing.
Everything in life's about timing, right? You would have saved me a more positive trip to Vons.
Yeah.
As you've kind of explained some of the pitfalls in the industry right now. I like to refer to the nutrition industry somewhat as in a state of confusion, because I feel like every time I read a new article, it takes me down a different rabbit hole with a different vegetable that I should, use as my primary source of protein or
Right.
happiness.
Only broccoli rabe, 20,
Yeah,
20 hours a
exactly.
day. Right.
Exactly. As I mentioned before, I'm a big spirulina consumer, so that I feel like no one's come out and said spirulina is bad for you. So I'm hoping that continues. um, but do you think the industry as a whole, has the ability to monitor itself or self-certify to make people understand what they're putting in their body? Because I think a lot of people right now are more focused on their health and what they do digest and understand that this is fuel for your body, and your body
Right.
is a machine. However, they could be taking protein powder that's got way more in it that actually counters
Right.
the effects of that, or actually creates other side effects that they don't even know about because it's just too much confusion.
Sure.
So do you have hope? Are we just going to evangelize this until, hopefully the message gets across? How do you view?
Well, there's so many different aspects to the question you're asking, and we could have 4-hour conversation on this question alone. I mean, let's start on a macro level with American politics and law. It's problematic in regards to food because of labeling. Labels can be extremely misleading. Companies are often not required to print things on label that they should be required to print, including, like you said, potentially toxic ingredients, ingredients that are contraindicated with other ingredients, the possibility that a product, it doesn't actually consume a concentrated enough amount of an ingredient to actually be beneficial. And that's misleading a lot of the time, that people think that they're consuming something that's a big superfood, which it may be technically if you eat 4 pounds of it in one sitting.
Right.
But that isn't concentrated enough in a product because it would be too expensive to process that way. There's the law. I mean, even the term organic, as we know, doesn't mean 100% organic. You can grow organic produce that then is allowed to be transported with a blanket that's laden with pesticides. And of course, transport takes, I think organic technically has to be, and please don't quote me on this, I may be incorrect. And certainly, I'm sure things have evolved since I checked this stat, but at a certain point, organic meant 70% organic. So it wasn't even
Wow.
100% organic, right? And then, of course, product, is in transport for days at a time and then unpacked in a grocery store where they're on supermarket shelves for days at a time before they're in their fridge for days at a time before they're
Right.
consumed. And they're also grown in soil by and large that's not mineral rich the way it was when our grandparents, were eating off the land, living off the land. And so, and of course, there's environmental toxins and pollutants that affect the way things are grown. And farming practices are also not, by and large, I mean, this is not true for everyone, of course, but a lot of farming practices aren't doing the things they need to do to preserve the integrity of the minerals in the soil that are affecting the nutrient quantities in our food. So that's point one.
Okay.
I don't know that we can fully ever understand what we're putting in our body because, unlike some other parts of the world, like Europe or New Zealand, we're not forced as a country to be as transparent. Okay, that's number one. Number two, there's the marketing game. People want to sell things. And so the impetus to make money, unfortunately, often obscures and can sort of dictate the agenda of a company in terms of wanting you to believe whatever it is that will increase sales, right? So I feel like it's always the responsibility of a consumer. It doesn't matter what you're consuming, whether it's food or other products and, household cleaning products or clothing or ideas or, cultural trends, whatever it is you're consuming, it's ultimately your job as a consumer to do your due diligence and try to piece apart what's real and what's false, what is transparent and authentic, and what, is a facade. and to factor in a person's intentions and agenda, and again, their relationships, right? So if a person is owned by a company that has, an agenda that may not be your wellness, then that's something important to note. I'm trying to keep this incredibly vague so I don't point fingers unnecessarily.
Sure. Yeah, we'll point them for you. Don't worry about it. We'll handle that part. We're not shy about it.
Okay.
Let me just one other comment on this point. I actually just came off of watching a documentary called Seaspiracy over the weekend on Netflix, and the documentary was about companies that provide labels to seafood companies that say that there was no dolphins or no other animals harmed, during the fishing process, and then 2 hours later, you realize that there's no proof that they've actually diligenced that label, and they're just selling that label, for marketing purposes. Is there a good housekeeping stamp of approval yet on natural versus organic, or in certain industries? Well, one, an FDA approval on something is not really what it used to be or what it should be, as far as I'm concerned.
Sure.
Serving sizes, I'm not sure who they put that down for, because I don't know the last time I put my Ben and Jerry's pint back 3 times and it constituted 4 servings. Or when they sell a bag of, peanut trail mix or what have you in the airport, and someone's like, oh, I ate healthy. It's like, well, actually, you finish the entire bag and that's an 8 serving size bag, do the math on the grams of sugar. So is there any body, any organization that people are starting to lean to say, hey, they actually have checked all this for us?
Yeah, there's not one necessarily. There are a few that. Do you have show notes at the end of the podcast? Because I can.
We'll put them all on there.
I'll email you the names of a couple more credible ones, but ultimately, unfortunately, there's just a lot that we can't fully know.
Yeah.
There are, like I said, especially when it comes to cleaning products and stuff, they've actually gotten their act together a little bit more in terms of transparency. The food industry it's tough. It's a tough one. I'm a perfectionist and a little bit compulsive. And so I was driven to start my own company to avoid not trusting what I was eating.
So it took a company. That's probably the hardest way to do it.
How controlling I am.
Right.
I actually have to, create an entire company to make sure that I'm eating clean. No, but my history of food is incredibly dimensional and textured and goes far beyond the scope of what we've discussed. But it's been my salvation in many ways, and it's also, of course, as a woman growing up in Los Angeles, been a source of stress at times. I think what we can do is only our best, and we will drive ourselves absolutely nuts if we become overly consumed with fact checking and cross checking. And, people have jobs and families and lovers and lives. And we can't certainly spend all day, microanalyzing the contents of the peanut bag as much as I'd like to, given my compulsive personality. I'm constantly in the push and pull of letting go, and then, back into analysis mode, and then letting go and back into analysis mode. I've got 2 small kids. Right. My kids just turned 4 and 6, and I'm going through this with them because, their little palates are different than mine, and their preferences. And, I'm also in certain ways, it's just that there are so many deep, fascinating psychological studies that could be done on parenting and kind of where we go mentally as parents when we're making certain kinds of decisions. Like, I find myself wanting to give them foods that were comforting to me as a child that are completely inappropriate for their diets, given what I know now about nutrition. But right. I'm like, as a kid, I would watch this show and eat this amazing snack that had no nutritional value, and it felt really good for me. Yeah. So maybe it will feel good for you.
There was a Seinfeld episode where he's like, there was so much sugar in cereals, and the one that really spoiled it was when they put cookies it was just cookies.
Yeah, just like little tiny hard
yeah,
chocolate
those were the
cookies
best.
with
And he's
milk.
like that.
Yeah.
Those are the guys that ruined it for
Yeah.
everyone, because then
You
it
really
got so
can't go
apparent
back.
what it was, right?
Yeah, totally. Like it became very clear at that point that that was in fact a sugar cereal. I mean, listen, when my son was 2, he had never eaten cereal. And now I have 6 different kinds of cereal in my cabinet. So, I've let go a lot, and, I buy organic and gluten-free and blah, blah, blah. We make our own granola. But at a certain point, like we have to live our lives.
Yeah.
I tried making homemade granola bars for my kids. I don't like them.
Right.
Like I've tried 4 or 5 different recipes.
All right.
So,
Well, we're not talking about your granola business here. So that's
yeah,
a good
this
thing,
isn't
right?
my granola. But the point being that there is a point at which we have to just let go of our standard of perfection and do our best, and then enjoy our lives.
Right.
So go ahead.
Let's pivot for a couple of minutes and talk about building a company, being an entrepreneur, being a mother. Obviously, I'm sure you see a number of companies that are in and around, your product line that get venture capital money and private equity, and they're trying to kind of shoot for the moon. How do you kind of calibrate what kind of success you want to have? Obviously you could probably take your company and turn it into a group that's backed by 10 or $20 million of venture capital or growth equity. They'd probably put you on the fastest treadmill, and have you work to, at the end of the day, raise your 2 kids in Santa Monica like you're already doing. And maybe you say, hey, look, I already got what I want. So I'm not interested in that part of the game. So how do you think about that? Or have you had the urge to do that? And how do you think about it?
I have the urge to do it when there are snafus. I just want to bypass.
When things aren't going well, I'd love for it to be part of someone else's problem.
When 85,000 labels don't have a barcode, welcome to my morning today. Seriously, but things go wrong all the time. But I'm not a fast girl, Pete. So I'm not interested in fast tracking anything. It's always tempting to speed up, and to move faster and to develop products faster and to get things to market faster and to get bigger, to expand, your customer base faster and all of those things. And there's a lot of money to be made in nutrition, and it's also highly competitive. And part of how I distinguish myself is that my customers trust me. Like they know that when I put something out there, it has been scrutinized. I am scrupulous about my research. I'm consulting with doctors who are helping me formulate everything. I'm actually physically in the lab, testing, sampling, discussing things. And like I said, I'm not willing to in any way lessen my standard of integrity. So that has been a plus for me. People who buy my products and consume my nutrition do so often indefinitely. Once they start, they don't stop because they do experience a difference. I feel like, it really boils down to what your objective is and, what your agenda is. Mine is not to make as much money as I can, as quickly as I can. It is to serve people and to allow people to have the experience that they deserve in their lives of doing the things that are meaningful to them, that they're meant to do on this planet. Like first and foremost, I'm a singer. Like I was a singer and songwriter for many years. I'm back in the studio in 2 weeks recording children's music.
Awesome.
Now that I've got kids. And for me, this company and these products are what allow me to do all of these other things that I love and am passionate about. And I'm giving that gift to people every day. And when things get hard and when I have off days with the company because, everything that I've lined up just has fallen somehow through the cracks and things aren't working out, I constantly remind myself why I'm doing this. And that ultimately every little nitty gritty aspect of a business, from writing copy to literally putting stickers on, container. I mean, there was a point early on in my company where my garage was my warehouse. I was shipping everything directly. I mean, we were going to, we were best friends with the UPS man. He was coming every day
Right.
to pick up product. I mean, this thing started, it was very grassroots. It's still an extremely small company, although I feel like we're doing prolific work. But there was a stage where literally I was doing every single thing with my husband. I mean, we designed the labels ourselves. We didn't outsource at all. I was customer service. I still sometimes am because my assistant now will forward emails to me that are more personal in nature. And, I respond directly back to customers. So there's a way in which I feel that I will be satisfied if I ever decide to move on from this business, knowing that I've done the very best I can for the people I'm serving, and that every little moment that at times can feel like a distraction is in essence still serving the same goal, just to
Hmm.
provide people with, the lives that they deserve to live.
Do you think that some of these companies get too big, get so far removed from the founder that they have an inability to understand that, a customer or a member is a human? And to give you an example, we work with a lot of health club chains, and they sometimes look at the data and say, oh, we lost X amount of members or X amount of credit cards didn't get processed. It's like, well, the reason why people cancel is because you're not giving them an experience that they expected, or something in
Mhm.
their life changed and you don't know how to be a part of that change. So when you look at all the small businesses that are around, most small businesses kind of wear their heart on their sleeve.
Mhm.
There is a personal connection. Do you see? I mean, we're in the finance side of this all the time, so we just
Mhm.
see deals going on, and we see money moving, and backing concepts and backing product lines. Um, do you see like that? There's an inherent flaw in that, and at some point you might get too big unless you have an amazing culture. If you lose the culture of a nutrition company, you basically lose the customer, I guess is what I'm
I
getting
think
off my soapbox right now.
Yeah,
So,
no, I mean, I can't really speak for other companies and how they run their businesses, because I don't know. I really try to focus on how I am feeling driven to run mine. What I know is that if you're too small, things also fall through the cracks. Like there was a point at which when I was personally and exclusively responsible for customer service under an alias name, I couldn't respond to everyone. I certainly didn't respond to people efficiently.
mhm,
Um, and that was problematic. And I felt not only personally badly about feeling like people were being ignored, but I was losing customers. So
right.
I think there's probably a balance where you want to be financed enough and, have enough of an ecosystem that's, complex and efficient enough where you can have, people who are assigned very specific tasks that make everything run smoothly and efficiently. But if there's no soul or heart to the company, I see your point, which is that there is potentially some integrity lost. I think it depends on what the consumer is wanting from that experience. Like if I'm selling a great product, as long as their needs are met either through the product or if they ask a question and they're responded to quickly by a customer service agent, maybe that's enough for someone.
Right.
Someone else may want to really deeply understand the story of the founder of the company and feel more personally invested in the development of the company and so on and so forth. So I'm not sure is the answer. I think it probably varies from customer to customer, and also is influenced by how a company is choosing to market themselves and present themselves. Like if your demographic is pretty young and it's spicy and sexy marketing, I might not require anything personal. I might just want great ads on YouTube or
Mhm.
Facebook or Insta pictures that are compelling to me. There's really no personal element to that if you've got like a young teenage intern posting for you, right?
Right.
So
Sure. Sure.
it's a in other words, it's a complex answer to a question that could be handled differently by different companies.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's a great point. So in closing here, do you have any, I'm assuming you have a lot of quotes that you live by. Sounds like you have a lot of quotes that you come up with. So any for our audience here on how you approach life or business that we haven't officially covered?
Quotes. I don't know that I have any quotes, but what I will say is that I always listen to my deeper knowing and my instincts. And how I do that is ask myself to let fear take a break, take a nap, and really tune into what the part of me that sort of just instinctively knows is trying to communicate. Every single business decision and life decision that's gone wrong has been me overriding my instincts, mistrusting myself, questioning my initial thought about something and bulldozing over it with analytics and cerebral, analyses. And so I would say to anyone starting a company or just wanting to live authentically and purely, trust yourself, just trust your gut. And in order to do that, just let fear take a back seat for a minute.
I like it. So Shauna, thanks for being on here.
Thanks.
From trusting yourself to trusting Alaya Naturals. We will put everything in the show notes. Look forward to seeing you at the Fairmont at one of our in-person events. Bring your kids, bring your collagen, and please bring me some spirulina.
Awesome. I will do, Pete.
All right. Awesome.
Yes.
Thanks for being on. I want to thank my friends at Burn, BRRRN, for sponsoring this podcast. They are the innovative company behind the world-renowned Burn Board. Many of you don't know, I was one of the top roller hockey players in all of Nassau County back in 1988 to 1990. If I had a Burn Board, watch out, I would probably be an NHL legend. Got a 7-day free trial on their on-demand library of hundreds of workouts, $30 off the purchase. Check it out at shop.theburn.com. We'll have it in the show notes. Use the checkout code HALO and go burn it on the Burn Board. Ice hockey in your living room, at-home fitness, low cost, low tech, low impact. Go Halo, burn it up.